Hello, greetings in the name of the Lord. Today we shall be sharing a powerful, heartfelt story that happened in the Bible and drawing many inspiration and moral lessons from it. I would like you to watch it to the end. Also write down your own idea about it. I need us to interact about this powerful incident that happened in the Bible. Please put down your own idea so that everyone can benefit from it also. Now, let's delve into the story. The story found in Judges chapter 19 is one of the most disturbing and tragic accounts in the Bible. It is a tale of betrayal, cruelty, and moral decay. Often referred to as the story of the Levite and his concubine. This narrative is set during a time when Israel had no centralized leadership, and everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Judges chapter 21 verse 25. The events that unfold are a grim reflection of the lawlessness and moral decline in Israel during that period. To fully grasp the significance of this chapter, we will recount the story in vivid detail and draw lessons from its dark themes. So follow us to the end and remain blessed and also inspired. And please subscribe to this channel for more. God bless you abundantly. The story begins with a Levite who lived in the remote hill country of Ephraim. Levites were members of the tribe set apart to serve in religious duties, but not all Levites worked directly in the temple or tabernacle. This particular Levite had a concubine, essentially a secondary wife from Bethlehem in Judah. After some time, the concubine was unfaithful to the Levite. Following her infidelity, she left him and returned to her father's house in Bethlehem. This is where the story begins to take a tragic turn. The Levite, after allowing some time to pass, decided to go to Bethlehem to persuade her to return with him. This might suggest that the Levite still had affection for her, or perhaps he saw it as his duty to reconcile their relationship. The hospitality of the concubine's father. When the Levite arrived at the concubine's father's house, the father greeted him warmly. Hospitality was an important custom in ancient Israel, and the father-in-law welcomed the Levite with open arms. For several days, the Levite was treated with great kindness, feasting and resting, as his father-in-law encouraged him to stay longer each day. Finally, after 5 days of hospitality, the Levite decided that it was time to return to his home in Ephraim, taking his concubine with him. As the Levite and his concubine set off on their journey, it began to grow late. The day was fading into evening, and they were still far from their destination. When they approached Jebus, which would later become Jerusalem, the Levite's servant suggested they stop for the night. However, the Levite refused, knowing that Jebus was still a Canaanite city, inhabited by foreigners. He felt safer spending the night in an Israelite town, so they continued on to Gibeah, a town belonging to the tribe of Benjamin. When they reached Gibeah, the Levite, his servant, and his concubine entered the city square, expecting someone to offer them hospitality for the night, a common practice in Israel at the time. Yet, no one came forward to invite them into their home. This omission was a significant breach of the cultural norm, highlighting the moral decay of Gibeah. As the group was waiting in the square, an old man who was returning from his work in the fields noticed them. He was not a native of Gibeah, but was originally from the hill country of Ephraim, like the Levite. Seeing them in the square with no place to stay, the old man approached them and offered them shelter in his home, warning them against spending the night in the square. Grateful for the old man's hospitality, the Levite, his servant, and the concubine accepted his offer. They entered the old man's house, and after feeding their animals, they sat down to eat and drink. For a brief moment, the tension in the story seems to dissipate, but it is only a calm before the storm. As they were enjoying their meal, a group of wicked men from the town surrounded the old man's house. They began banging on the door, demanding that the old man bring out the Levite so they could. This horrifying demand echoes the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, where the men of Sodom made a similar request regarding Lot's guests. Genesis 19. The old man, horrified by the mob's intentions, went outside and pleaded with them. "No, my friends, don't be so vile," he said. "Since this man is my guest, don't do this outrageous thing." In his desperation to protect the Levite, the old man offered his own daughter and the Levite's concubine to the men, saying, "I will bring them out to you now, and you can use them and do to them whatever you wish." But as for this man, don't do such an outrageous thing. This action, while shocking and morally repugnant to modern readers, reflects the brutal realities of ancient customs, where a host was expected to protect his male guests at all costs. However, this twisted attempt to protect the Levite only leads to greater tragedy. Instead of protecting the concubine, the Levite himself seized her and handed her over to the mob. The men of Gibeah abused her throughout the night, violating her in one of the most heinous acts of cruelty in the Bible. When dawn finally broke, they left her for dead at the door of the house. As morning came, the Levite opened the door to find his concubine lying there, her hands on the threshold. He coldly told her to get up so they could leave, but she did not respond. She had died from the abuse she suffered. Filled with rage, the Levite took the body of his concubine, placed it on his donkey, and returned home. Once there, he committed an unthinkable act. He cut her body into 12 pieces and sent one piece to each of the 12 tribes of Israel. This gruesome act was meant to serve as a call to action, a rallying cry for the tribes to take notice of the atrocity that had occurred in Gibeah. The entire nation of Israel was shocked by this grotesque message. No one had ever seen or heard of such an act before. The Levite's message succeeded in galvanizing the people, and representatives from all 12 tribes gathered at Mizpah to hear the Levite recount what had happened. When the Levite told the assembled Israelites about the events in Gibeah, they were filled with righteous anger. They declared that such an atrocity must not be allowed to stand, and they vowed to seek justice. The tribes of Israel demanded that the men of Gibeah responsible for the crime be handed over for punishment. However, the tribe of Benjamin, to which Gibeah belonged, refused to comply. Instead of handing over the guilty men, the Benjamites chose to protect them, thus setting the stage for a civil war. The battle against Benjamin, the first civil war of Israel. The refusal of the tribe of Benjamin to deliver the criminals led to a brutal conflict between the 11 tribes of Israel and the tribe of Benjamin. The Israelite army, numbering 400,000 men, marched against Benjamin, demanding justice. The Benjamites, though greatly outnumbered, were known for their skill in battle, particularly their 700 left-handed slingers who could sling stones with incredible accuracy. Despite their initial setbacks, the Israelites eventually defeated the Benjamites after 3 brutal battles. In the final confrontation, the Israelites ambushed and destroyed Gibeah, leaving the town in ruins. In their fury, they slaughtered almost the entire tribe of Benjamin, killing men, women, and children, leaving only 600 Benjamite men alive, who fled to the wilderness. The civil war resulted in a near extinction of the tribe of Benjamin. After the fighting ended, the Israelites realized the gravity of what they had done. An entire tribe of Israel was on the verge of disappearing because of their actions. The rest of Israel mourned for the tribe of Benjamin and sought a way to prevent its total annihilation. In a desperate attempt to preserve the tribe, the Israelites devised a plan. They allowed the surviving Benjamite men to abduct women from Shiloh, thus providing them with wives and ensuring the continuation of their tribe. This solution, though morally questionable, reflects the desperation of the time. The story in Judges 19 is one of the darkest and most unsettling in the Bible, and it offers several important moral lessons. 1. The consequences of moral decay. The story of the Levite and his concubine highlights the moral and spiritual decay that had taken root in Israel during the time of the Judges. The phrase "everyone did what was right in their own eyes." Judges 21:25 is a fitting summary of the lawlessness and lack of accountability that characterized the period, when a society abandons its moral compass and ignores God's laws. Chaos and violence are inevitable. This story is a stark reminder of the dangers of living in a morally relativistic society where justice is perverted and people act according to their own desires rather than God's will. Number 2. The failure of hospitality and protection. Hospitality was one of the highest virtues in ancient Near Eastern culture, especially in Israel. Offering protection and care to strangers was a sacred duty. The failure of the people of Gibeah to provide shelter to the Levite and his companions, followed by their vicious attack, marks a complete breakdown of social norms and values. The old man who finally offered hospitality tried to fulfill his duty by protecting the Levite, but his willingness to sacrifice his own daughter and the Levite's concubine instead points to the deep moral corruption of the time. This serves as a lesson about the importance of true hospitality and protection for the vulnerable. When society fails to protect those in need, whether through indifference, selfishness, or cruelty, the consequences are often catastrophic, as we see in the horrific outcome of the concubine's fate. 3. The dangers of patriarchy and the devaluation of women. One of the most shocking aspects of this story is the treatment of the Levite's concubine. From the moment she is introduced, her life is marked by suffering and marginalization. First, she is described as being unfaithful to the Levite, though the text does not explain her reasons or motivations. Then, she is treated as a mere bargaining chip by the Levite and the old man, both of whom are willing to sacrifice her to the mob to save themselves. The Levite's cold treatment of her handing her over to the mob and then showing indifference to her suffering and death exposes the deep injustice faced by women in this patriarchal society. The fact that the Levite dismembered her body and used it as a symbol to incite outrage among the tribes further illustrates her dehumanization. This narrative forces us to confront the reality of how women were treated as property or tools to be used by men, and it offers a sobering reminder of the ongoing need to stand against gender-based violence and injustice. The story is a call to value every human life, especially the lives of the marginalized and oppressed, and to resist systems that degrade and exploit others. Number 4. The need for godly leadership. The recurring refrain in the book of Judges, in those days, Israel had no king, everyone did what was right in his own eyes. Judges 21:25 serves as a profound commentary on the spiritual condition of the nation. The absence of godly leadership allowed lawlessness and chaos to reign. In this context, the brutal events in Gibeah reflect a society that has lost its sense of justice, righteousness, and communal responsibility. The story of the Levite and his concubine highlights the danger of living in a world without godly leadership. In the absence of a strong moral authority, people become slaves to their own selfish desires, and injustice flourishes. The Bible emphasizes the need for leaders who fear God and uphold His laws. In our modern time, this story serves as a reminder of the importance of godly leadership in both personal and societal life. Without it, moral decay and societal collapse are inevitable. Number 5. The perils of collective punishment and unchecked anger. The aftermath of the concubine's death, the gruesome act of dismembering her body and sending the pieces to the tribes of Israel, illustrates the dangers of unchecked outrage. The Levite's extreme response, while a call for justice, incited a wave of collective punishment that led to the near extermination of an entire tribe. While the men of Gibeah were guilty of heinous crimes, the Israelites' collective fury against the whole tribe of Benjamin resulted in a civil war that decimated the Benjamite population, including innocent women and children. This tragic outcome warns against the dangers of letting vengeance, anger, and collective punishment run unchecked. The overreaction of the Israelites in response to one crime shows how quickly righteous indignation can turn into destructive violence, leaving devastation in its wake. The Bible repeatedly calls for measured justice, emphasizing the need for fairness and avoiding excessive punishment. Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 21. The moral here is clear. In seeking justice, we must be careful not to fall into the trap of retaliatory vengeance, which can lead to further cycles of violence and destruction. Number 6. The importance of community accountability. The crime committed in Gibeah was not an isolated incident involving only a few wicked men. It became a communal issue when the tribe of Benjamin refused to hold the perpetrators accountable. By protecting the guilty men, the tribe of Benjamin essentially endorsed their actions, leading to widespread conflict and devastation. This points to the importance of community accountability. When sin and injustice are allowed to fester without being addressed, the consequences affect not only individuals but entire communities. The refusal of the Benjamites to confront and condemn the evil within their own tribe led to catastrophic consequences for everyone involved. Number 7. The need for mercy and forgiveness. At the conclusion of this violent and tragic narrative, the Israelites faced a moral dilemma. After nearly wiping out the tribe of Benjamin in their fury, they realized that their actions had almost led to the extinction of one of the 12 tribes of Israel. In an attempt to rectify this, they sought a way to preserve the tribe by allowing the surviving Benjamite men to marry women from Shiloh, ensuring that the tribe would not disappear entirely. Though the method they used to resolve the issue was ethically questionable, the intent behind it, the desire to show mercy and restore a broken relationship, is a significant lesson. The Israelites recognized that their anger had gone too far, and they sought to prevent further destruction. This illustrates the need for mercy and forgiveness, even in the midst of justice. While it is essential to confront sin and hold people accountable, there must also be room for grace and reconciliation. In a broader spiritual sense, this story foreshadows the biblical message of redemption. Despite human sinfulness and the consequences of our actions, God's mercy is always available, offering the possibility of restoration. Even after a period of judgment, God provides a way for reconciliation and healing. In conclusion, the story of the Levite and his concubine in Judges 19 is one of the most tragic and unsettling narratives in the Bible. It exposes the depths of human depravity and the devastating consequences of living in a society where there is no regard for God's laws. The events of this story unfold in a time of moral chaos, highlighting the dangers of unchecked sin, the failure of leadership, and the importance of justice tempered with mercy. From this dark story, we draw several important moral lessons. 1. Moral decay leads to violence, injustice, and societal collapse. Number 2. True hospitality and protection for the vulnerable are essential to maintaining a just society. Number 3. The devaluation of women and their treatment as property reflect deep systemic injustices that must be confronted. Number 4. Godly leadership is crucial to maintaining moral order and justice. Number 5. Unchecked anger and collective punishment can lead to devastating consequences. Number 6. Communities must hold one another accountable to prevent the spread of corruption and violence. Number 7. There is always a place for mercy and reconciliation in the pursuit of justice. Ultimately, the story of Judges 19 serves as a grim warning of what happens when humanity turns away from God and allows selfish desires and sinful impulses to govern their lives. It is a call to return to a life rooted in God's justice, mercy, and love, and to work towards a society where righteousness prevails. While the darkness of this story may be overwhelming, it points to the ultimate hope found in God's redemptive plan, a plan that offers restoration and renewal to a broken world. Thanks for following to the end. I am sure you were blessed. Please let's use the moral lessons from this story in our everyday life. Let's trust in God to always live by God's love and mercy, and also to ensure we see with the eyes of God. And also in every situation, try to do what God would have done if He were the one in that situation. God bless us as we do this. Please share this video with your loved ones and friends. And I sincerely invite you to join our Christian family by subscribing to this channel to stay updated with all our uploads. Thanks for watching this. And please write your own idea in the comments section. I mean, whatsoever you learned or any inspiration you got from the story. Please share your own ideas because someone can learn from your ideas as well.